Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Most of you know who I am, and for those of you who don't know who I am, my name is KrimsonKreamer, and we are back with another Yu-Gi-Oh deck build. In today's build, we are doing the Shiranui deck. Now, a lot of people have been asking for this deck, and personally, I'm very excited to be doing this deck because this is probably another one of my favorite Archetype decks, especially because of just how it is. Like, I always like fire-based theme stuff and samurais, and this deck also is very reminiscent of the anime Shaman King, where a human will possess a spirit and be able to fuse with them and be able to, you know, unlock hidden abilities with it. And this archetype definitely shows that with how all of the cards are kind of linked together. Like you have the Shiranui Samurai over here, and then you have the Spectral Swords where you then use them to synchro summon into their, you know, their bigger forms and stuff. And it's a really cool archetype. I highly suggest checking it out. You can actually get it very easily if you do solo mode. You can get the starter deck for this deck, and then pretty much from there improve on it on your own by crafting or getting the secret packs for these cards. But anyway, let's get into this deck build now. Yes, as you can see, this is a 50 card deck. I tried running it lower, but I feel like with this deck, 50 is a little bit better, especially with what all it has going for it, and you'll see when we go over the example duels with this deck, why I kind of like running it at 50. First, let's go over the cards in this deck that are out of the archetype and why I think they work for this deck. Obviously, we have, you know, Effect Veiler to be able to negate attacks. Ash Blossom is actually very good for this deck, with it being a fire zombie and a tuner, plus the added effects that Ash Blossom always brings to this, to duels. I also have Ghost Belle, the Haunted Mansion, because the way that she works is that she's able to stop stuff from the graveyard and banish, and again, it's another zombie tuner, so again, very good for this deck. Then we have Tatsunekro, which is this card. If it is normal summoned or set, would be used as synchro material. One monster from your hand can be used as one of the other materials, and if you do that, all materials for that summon are banished instead of being sent to the graveyard. You cannot special summon monsters except zombie monsters. Now, as you can see, this is very good for this deck because the Shiranui requires a lot of banishment, because a lot of the main deck monsters and the extra deck monsters get additional effects if they're banished. So with this card, if you do not have the ability to special summon a second monster, but you have a monster in your hand, you can put down this card, be able to synchro summon using a card from your hand, synchro summon a monster, get the monster out, and then on top of that, get the added bonus from the banished monster. Really good card in this deck. I highly recommend crafting this card for the Shiranuis. As for the magic and traps of this deck, we are running Salamandra. This is a very classic Yu-Gi-Oh card, and it's very sentimental to me because I used this card a lot growing up, and it was probably one of my favorite cards to see in the Yu-Gi-Oh duel along with the Flaming Swordsman. So I threw this in here because I think it would be a lot of fun, especially because with the whole archetype being fire-based monsters, I feel like it worked really well with it. We also have the Power of the Guardians, a very good SR card. And if an attack declared involving the equipped monster, place one spell counter on this card. The equipped monster gains 500 attack and defense for each spell counter on this card. If the equipped monster would be destroyed by battle or card effect, you can remove one spell counter from the field instead. So obviously having this equipped to one of your higher level synchro monsters is good. Being able to boost up his attack every time he attacks, and then if he would be destroyed, just remove a spell counter, and it just makes it a little bit more of an obstacle for your opponent to get around. Up next, we have Soul Absorption. If a card is banished, gain 500 life points for each. So this is good for this deck because obviously you're going to be banishing a lot and bringing back. So, you know, being able to gain that extra 500 life points is a little bit good, especially because it's a continuous card, so you can kind of just leave it on the field and makes your opponent really think, like, man, do I go for this card or do I go for one of his other stronger cards, because he can either gain life points or, you know, it definitely throws a wrench into your opponent's strategy. Next is Pyramid of Wonders. This card actually comes in the Shiranui deck build, so you kind of get this card automatically, And it's a really good card if I do say so myself. All zombie monsters you control gain 200 attack for each monster your opponent controls. If exactly one monster you control and no other cards would be destroyed, you can send this card to the graveyard instead. So this is kind of like a good failsafe. Obviously, if your opponent has a field swarmed with monsters, being able to boost up your monster for each monster is good. So if you have 5 monsters on your opponent's field plus 6, you know, that's an additional 1,200 attack points that you're giving your monsters, all of your monsters. And if a monster would be destroyed, you can destroy this instead. So it's kind of like a failsafe. You do take the damage from the attack, however, but, you know, being able to keep your monster alive is a little bit better than being able to, you know, suffer a little bit of damage. Obviously, we are running Mirror Force in this deck because Mirror Force is great. Infinite Impertinence, because this is also another good hand trap. Target one face-up monster your opponent controls. Negate its effect until the end of this turn. Then, if this card was set before activation and is on the field at resolution, for the rest of the turn, all of the spell and trap effects in this column are negated. If you control no cards, you can activate this card from your hand. So this is obviously another good hand trap to have. I always highly recommend trying to run 2 of these. I just don't run 2 of these because I'm doing a lot of these deck builds. I need to build a lot of these UR cards, so I probably should get more of these in here as well. I'm also running Rivalry of Warlords. Each player can only control one type of monster. Send all other face-up monsters they control to the graveyard. This is great to have in this deck because especially everything in this deck is zombies. There's nothing outside of this archetype or outside of the type that it is that you would need to have in this deck besides a zombie. And again, it throws a monkey wrench in your opponent's deck if they are running anything outside of having one type of monster. Like if you're playing against like a Blue Eyes deck where they have, you know, the sages and the tuners that are not dragons, so it definitely throws it into that. Or really anything else that has multiple types to its archetype, like Blacklister, like Buster Blader, and stuff like that. Again, throws a huge monkey wrench into those plans and being able to do this. Zoma, the Spirit. Special summon this card in defense position as an effect monster. It is a zombie dark level 4, attack 18, defense 500. This card is still also a trap. If this card summoned this way is destroyed by battle, inflict damage to your opponent equal to the attack of the monster that destroyed it. So this is good to have in terms of defense for this deck, being able to summon it out. It does get summoned in defense, but obviously with that added effect of, you know, stopping your opponent from having to attack you is good. And then it still acts as a level 4 monster, so, you know, you stop your opponent from attacking you because they don't want to take the damage. Then you summon out one of your synchro monsters, and you can use it as a synchro summon. It doesn't stay a monster once it goes to the graveyard, however, but it's still a level 4 monster, and it's still viable for this deck, and especially with the effect that it has, being able to have that added amount of defense is good for this deck. And finally, we have Gozen Match in the spell and traps of this deck. Each player can only control one attribute of monster. Send all other face-up monsters they control to the graveyard. Now, I run this in case you aren't trying to run the next card in this deck, which is Red Eye Zombies Necro Dragon, or if you're not able to get out Zomba out in time, or if you try to want to play this after you play Zoma, or before you play Zoma. This doesn't have to be in the deck, honestly, but I threw it in here just in case because, you know, a lot of this archetype is mainly fire, so being able to just have a bunch of fire monsters out on your side of the field is good. If it comes down to where you need to, you know, where you can't have a lot of fires, then you kind of throw a wrench into your own plans, but I still run this just in case to be safe. Especially because I'm really not summoning out anything else outside of the fire archetype besides maybe Zoma or even Tatsu Necro. But other than that, the rest of these are fire, and that's pretty much what you're going to be sticking to a majority of the time. And it's a really good card to have. And then in the extra deck, the only other card outside of the archetype that we have is Red Eyes Zombie Necro Dragon. It is a level 7 zombie tuner. Requires 1 tuner and 1+ non-tuner monsters. Gains 100 attack and defense for each zombie monster on the field and in the graveyards. When another zombie monster is destroyed by battle, you can special summon one zombie monster from either graveyard to your field. You can only use this effect of Red Eye Zombie Necro Dragon once per turn. So this is just an added bonus of being able to have a monster out on the field and being able to gain attack based on cards in the graveyards and in the field, so this works well for you. And if you're playing against someone else who has a zombie deck as well, this is good for you to be able to utilize their cards as well. Also, I'm sorry, I forgot the card Zombie Power Struggle. Target one zombie monster on the field. Until the end of this turn, it gains 1,000 attack or loses 1,000 attack. During your main phase, if this card is in your graveyard, you can shuffle one of your banished zombie monsters into the deck, and if you do, set this card but banish it when it leaves the field. You can only use this effect of Zombie Power Struggle once per turn. Now, you run this card, obviously, because this is kind of like, you know, a nice little quick play spell where if your opponent has a monster and it's just a little bit below 1,000 attack points difference from you, obviously you activate this card, gain that attack, turn the tables on your opponent, and if you have a banished zombie monster, you can be able to reset this card back to the field. So you can pretty much get 2 uses out of this card. That's why I'm running 2, so to get a total of 4 uses out of this deck. And with having the added bonus of the Shiranuis banishing themselves, you're guaranteed to get at least 4 uses out of this deck, or at most, should I say. And that's really it out of the cards outside of this archetype that I'm running. Let me tell you about the cards that we are running in this archetype. Obviously, we have Shiranui Spectral Sword. It is a level 2 zombie tuner. If this card is in your graveyard, except the turn that it was sent to the graveyard, you can target one non-tuner zombie monster in your graveyard. Banish both it and this card, and if you do, special summon one zombie synchro monster from your extra deck, whose levels equal the total levels of those 2 monsters had. You can only use the effect of Shiranui Spectral Sword once per turn. So now this card is good in case you summon it out, you synchro summon a monster out on the field, and then on your next turn, you can synchro summon again using this card in the graveyard, banishing it and another monster that you have, and to be able to synchro summon. And majority of the time, honestly, with this deck, it's the whole time, if you have any of your other Shiranui cards out on the in the graveyard, banish it, you get the added effect of the banished card, being able to synchro summon. It's a really good combination. I highly recommend running this. Obviously, you are going to be running this because, like I said, the starter deck is pretty much with this card in its base, so there would be no other reason why you wouldn't run this card. Up next, we have Shiranui Sword Master. He is a level 2 zombie monster. If this card is in your graveyard and you control 2 or more Shiranui monsters with different names, you can special summon this card, but banish it when it leaves the field. If this card is banished, you can target one zombie monster you control. It gains 600 attack until the end of this turn. You can only use each effect of Shiranui Sword Monster once per turn. So now I kind of keep this card in the deck to get that added effect of being able to have him in the graveyard, and then once I get 2 Shiranui monsters on the field, being able to summon him back to the field if I need to, and then when he's banished, being able to have a monster gain 600 attack until the end of the turn is a added bonus to be able to, you know, just get over that threshold if depending on the monster that is summoned out and whatnot. And it's also the only other card that I can use to summon one of the extra deck monsters, which is Shiranui Sword Saga, because it is a level 5. And he's a level 2, so I'd need to use him and then a level 3 tuner, or probably either a level 4 and a level 1 tuner. So it doesn't really matter in terms of what it is, but it's really not meant to, you know, that's why I'm only running one of Sword Saga and not really anything else, because, you know, it's kind of like a throwaway card. If I need to summon it out, I can, but I really don't need to a majority of the time. That's why we are running 2 Shiranui Swords Masters. We really want that banished effect over anything else, and then being able to summon it back from the graveyard to be able to use it to summon out anything else is also good as well. Up next, we have Shiranui Spectral Sword Shade. Now, this is the upgraded form of the Shiranui Spectral Sword, as you can tell, because it is a level 3 now. Its effect is you contribute this card, then target 2 of your banished zombie monsters except Shiranui Spectral Sword Shade, including a Shiranui monster. Special summon them in defense position, but you negate their effects. Also, you cannot special summon monsters for the rest of the turn except zombie monsters. You can only use this effect once per turn. Now, this card is integral to this deck, being able to summon it out, tributing it, and then summoning monsters from your banish back to your field to be able to use for more synchro or link summoning potential. If you do link summon with it, it's not the end of the world, because there are 5 monsters in the extra deck that use this card in terms of a level 3 synchro. So it's not the end of the world. It's a good card to have, obviously. It runs really well in this deck, and I don't think it comes in the starter deck with this deck, so this is one card that you probably have to craft, but it definitely runs well with this deck, especially with being able to pull cards back from the banish zone. back onto the field. So if you were to banish a synchro and a tuner, you can pretty much get those back onto the field and then be able to re-synchro out if you need to. There are endless possibilities to the strategies that you can run with this deck and with this card per se. Shiranui Smith, probably one of the first basic monsters in this deck, a level 4 zombie monster, 1000 attack. If this card is sent from the field to the graveyard as a synchro material, you can add one Shiranui card from your deck to your hand. Except Shiranui Smith, you can only use this effect once per turn. If this card is banished, you can activate this effect. This turn, zombie type monsters you control not can be disorded by battle. Now, the only reason I'm running one of these is because, yes, while that first effect is good, trying to get it out is not easy, especially because he can't special summon anything, so it's kind of like, you know, this is like a 2-turn strategy with this card, so that's why we're only running one of him. But being able to banish him and being able to save your monsters from not being destroyed by battle, or you kind of use this card in junction with any of the spell and trap cards that, you know, require cards to be banished and whatnot to save them, and it's just a little bit of an added bonus. So that's why we're running one of this in this deck and not multiple, but it's still a good card to have. Up next, we have Shiranui Spirit Master. When this card is normal summoned, you can special summon one Shiranui monster from your hand or graveyard except Shiranui Spirit Master, but banish it when it leaves the field. If this card is banished, you can target one face-up card your opponent controls, destroy it. You can only use this effect once per turn. Now, this is one of the really good cards to have in this deck, because one, with the added bonus of being able to special summon when this card is normal summoned. So if you have one of your tuners in your hand, that's great. You're able to synchro summon right there. Boom. Then with the added effect of it banishing, you can target one face-up monster your opponent controls, destroy it, is another great effect to have. Plus, with it being a 1500 attack monster, obviously, you know, it's a little bit higher than most things. So if you need to attack with it to do a little bit of damage, you definitely can. But you're really obviously using this card for the added effect of being able to special summon one of your Shiranui monsters from your hand or your graveyard, if need be. Finally, probably the main deck monster that you want to have all the time is Shiranui Samurai. Quick effect, you can banish one zombie monster from your graveyard. This card gains 600 deck, and if it does, banish any monster that battled this card after damage calculation. These effects last until the end of the turn. If this card is banished, you can target one Shiranui monster in your graveyard, except Shiranui Samurai, add it to your hand. You can only use the effect of this card once per turn. Now, this is a great card to have. It is a 1800 attack monster. It's level 4, so you don't need any sacrifices to get it out. And with the added effect of banishing cards from your graveyard to have this card gain attack, then that banished monster also activates its effect. So you pretty much trigger a chain of effects based on this card alone. I also use this card a lot for the synchro summons, but you don't have to, especially because of the effect of it being able to banish and gain attack and being able to do what it does. It's a really good card, and you're always going to be using this in the deck no matter what. Up next, you have Shiranui Solitaire. You contribute one zombie monster, special summon one zombie tuner with 0 defense from your deck. If this card is banished, you can target one of your banished Shiranui monsters except this card, or up to 2 instead. If Shiranui Style Synthesis is on the field, special summon them. You can only use its effect once per turn. Now, this card is kind of good to use in tandem with Spirit Master, because you summon Spirit Master out, special summon Solitaire, and then with Solitaire's effect, you tribute himself to get out your tuner, and then be able to synchro summon from there. And with the added bonus effect of this card being able to bring back your banished Shiranui monsters from the banished zone to the field, and up to 2 if you have Shiranui Style Synthesis on the field, is really good to get more synchro and link material out onto the field to be able to summon them. And with this deck having a bunch of cards have the name Shiranui Style Synthesis, you don't have to worry about like, oh, I need this one card. You have at least like 4 or 5 cards in the deck that do so. Up next is Shiranui Squire. This is the other basic card of the deck that you kind of want to run, especially with the Shiranui Samurai. When this card is normal summoned, you can special summon one Shiranui Spectral Sword monster from your hand or deck. Also, you cannot special summon monsters for the rest of this turn except zombie monsters. If this card is banished, you can draw one card, then discard one card. You can only use each effect of this once per turn. So now this card is really good, especially because this card also gets out your synchro your tuner monsters as well to be able to synchro and or link summon if need be. Great card to have personally. I like her added effects of being able to draw a card and then discard a card, because then if you have cards in your hand, you draw a card, then you can send something to the graveyard. Honestly, a lot of these cards are worth having in the graveyard zone as well, so it's not really that bad of an effect, and it works well with this archetype and what it does. So again, obviously all these main deck monsters is what you should definitely be running, and up until how many you want to run, that's all up to you. Obviously, I'm running 3 of a majority of these, and then 2 and 1 of one of the other cards. But that's up to you how many you want to run. This is just what I run personally. As for the magic and trap cards of this deck, let's talk about Shiranui Style Synthesis. This is the field spell. Once per turn, if you control no monsters, you can send 1 card from your hand to graveyard, then activate one of these effects. Target 1 zombie type monster with 0 defense in your graveyard, special summon it. Target 1 of your banished zombie type monsters with 0 defense, return to the graveyard, and you can only activate one of these once per turn. So this card requires you to have cards in your hand to be able to activate these effects. Being able to special summon monsters from your graveyard, and or being able to special summon monsters, or being able to return monsters back from your banished zone to the graveyard is good. Obviously, you're going to want to run 3 of these in your deck. I'm running 2 right now because I have a bunch of other cards that act as the name Shiranui Style Synthesis. So that's why I'm only really running 2 of these, because I have a lot of other cards that work with this. Like Shiranui Style Solomon. This card's name becomes Shiranui Style Synthesis while in the spell and trap zone. Once per turn, you can activate one of these effects. Banish 1 zombie monster from your graveyard. The normal and special summons of your zombie monsters cannot be negated for the rest of the turn, even if this card leaves the field. Or you can target 1 zombie monster you control, banish it, and then you can send 1 zombie monster with 0 defense from your deck to the graveyard. So now, a lot of these cards, like I said, they banish and get rid of cards to the graveyard. This deck requires that, so that's why you really don't run these outside of, any basic zombie type deck, or even the Shiranui deck, because I know a lot of decks require cards to be sent to the graveyard and or banished. So this is good to have in case you need to do those things. Next we have Ghost Meets Girl, a Shiranui story. If your opponent controls a monster, discard 1 zombie monster, special summon 1 Shiranui monster with a different name from your deck or graveyard. Also, you cannot special summon monsters except zombie monsters. For the rest of this turn, after this card resolves, you can only activate 1 Ghost Meets Girl, a Shiranui story, once per turn. So this is just a good card to have to be able to, send a monster to the graveyard, special summon a monster with a different name, have multiple cards in the graveyard and on the field, and be able to set up your strategies for future plays. It is a quick play spell, so you kind of want to use this more on your opponent's turn than your own turn, but either way, it's a good way to get monsters, like I said, to the graveyard and onto the field to kind of just be able to do all the effects that you really need to do. Next, we have Shiranui Style Swallow Slash. Tribute 1 zombie monster, then target 2 cards on the field. Destroy them, then banish 1 Shiranui monster from your deck. You can only activate this once per turn. So you kind of want to use this in tandem with cards that are banished. So this is more of a late game trap card than an early game trap card, especially if you have your banished zone kind of a little bit more full, because you want to use this card in tandem with Shiranui Solitaire, where you get his effect of being able to summon out monsters. So, yes, you tribute a monster. However, with this card, you can actually bring back 2 banished monsters from the banished zone, and it kind of works that way. And it's a good way to get rid of 2 things on your opponent's side of the field, because it's not specifically monsters that you're destroying, it's 2 cards. So they could be face down, they could be face up, magic spell, trap, whatever. Good card to have in this deck. You can definitely run more if you want to. I'm just running the 1 right now. But if you want to run more, that's perfectly fine. Shiranui Style Success. Special summon 1 zombie monster from your hand, but banish it when it leaves the field. You can banish this card from your graveyard, then target 1 zombie monster you control. That zombie monster is unaffected by card effects this turn, except its own. You can only use 1 Shiranui Style Success effect per turn, and only once that turn. So this card is good to obviously being able to special summon a monster, and then when it leaves the field, it's banished, so then you can get that banished effect. And then if this card is in the graveyard as well, you can have your zombie monsters be unaffected by card effects. You have to obviously target the one monster. So this is good to have in case you have your boss monster out and you're going to make sure that he's not destroyed or targeted by anything. Boom, you have Shiranui style success in the graveyard. Pop that bitch to the banish zone and be able to activate this effect to protect that monster. And then finally in this deck we have Shiranui style Samsara. This card's name becomes Shiranui style Synthesis while it is in the spell and trap zone. Once per turn, you can activate one of these effects. Banish one face-up zombie monster you control. You take no damage this turn, even this card leaves the field. Or you can target 2 of your banished zombie-type monsters and shuffle them both into the deck and then draw 1 card. Now, this is good in terms of defense on your side of the field. Obviously, if your opponent has a bunch of big, high-level, high-damaging monsters, you activate the effect, banish one of your zombie-type monsters, and then you take no damage this turn. And depending on the zombie monster that you banished, you can actually get the added effect of being able to, change their position of attack to defense, lower their attacks, or being able to do a plethora of other things that you need to do for this deck. Or you can use the effect to target 2 of your banished zombie-type monsters with 0 defense, shuffle them back into the deck, and then draw a card, to be able to mill cards out of the banished zone back into your deck. Because that's what I love about this deck, is that they just don't stay in the banished zone. You're able to, recycle a lot of the cards back from the graveyard and the banished zone back into the main deck, and vice versa, or onto the field, or in your hand. That's what I really like about this deck. And this card definitely helps out a lot with that. Now let's move on to the extra deck. There isn't really a lot here. We kind of went over a few of these cards already. So the first card we have, Shiranui Sword Saga, level 5, synchro monster. You can only special summon Shiranui Sword Saga once per turn. If this card is special summoned, you could target 1 monster on the field, change its battle position. If this card is banished, you could special summon 1 Shiranui token, Zombie Fire, level 1, attack 0, defense 0. You can only use this effect once per turn, so you kind of use this in tandem to be able to have more monsters out on the field to get into the Link monster of this deck, because this card only requires 2+ zombie monsters, so being able to have more of the sacrificial cards out on the field is good. And that's what this card kind of is there for. And obviously changing battle position and other stuff like that. You don't really need this card in the deck, but, if you need this card, it's definitely there and definitely works for the archetype, especially because it is a part of the archetype. Up next is Shiranui Samurai Saga. 1 zombie type tuner plus 1 or more non-tuner type zombie monsters. Once per turn during either player's turn, you could target 1 of your banished zombie type monsters, shuffle it into the deck, and if you do, change to defense position all monsters your opponent controls with attack less than or equal to that monster's. If this card is banished, you can target 1 face-up monster your opponent controls. It loses 500 attack. You can only activate, or you can only special summon Shiranui Samurai Saga once per turn. So this card is really the one card that you're going to be getting out the most, especially if you're having your level 2 tuner and all of your level 4 main deck monsters. This is the card that you're always going to be going to. It's a great card to have, being able to have the added bonus of being able to make your opponent's monsters go into defense position if they have attack less than the or equal to the monster that you banished. And then if this card is banished, being able to make your opponent's monster lose 500 attack is another good thing to have, especially if that 500 is a little bit crucial and you need to get over that limit. There you go, right there. Up next is Shiranui Squire Saga. This is a level 7 tuner monster. This is the card they're going to be using with a lot of your level 3 tuners, obviously, to be able to get this card out. And this card has a really good effect. You can only special summon this card once per turn. Once per turn, you can banish 1 face-up monster you control or in your graveyard, then apply these effects in sequence depending on what that monster was before it was banished, if it was any of these. If it is a zombie monster, all monsters you have gain 300 attack. If it's a fire monster, destroy 1 spell or trap card on the field. And if it's a synchro, destroy 1 monster on the field. So this is good to have if you have a synchro monster in your graveyard or on your field that you don't want to use, such as Sword Saga, and then getting that added bonus of Sword Saga as well. Being able to gain all of these effects based on that monster is good, because you get that 300 attack. Then you could destroy a spell or trap, and then you could destroy a monster. boom, you pretty much are destroying your opponent's defenses and offenses right off the bat with this card. So this is another great card to have in terms of this deck. Up next is Shiranui Shogun Saga. This is a level 8 synchro monster. Requires 1 zombie type tuner and 1 or more non-tuner zombie type monsters. This card does come in the Shiranui structure deck, so you don't have to worry about crafting this card. If this card is special summoned, you can banish 1 zombie type monster from your graveyard. This card gains attack equal to the banished monster's original attack until the end of this turn. If this card on the field is destroyed by battle or card effect and sent to the graveyard, you can target one of your banished zombie type monsters with 0 defense, return to the graveyard. You can only special summon Shiranui Shogun Saga once per turn. So now this card is great to have because when you special summon him out, you can then target one of your monsters in the graveyards, banish it, then this card gains the attack of that banished card. And with the card that you banished, if it's obviously a Shiranui card, you're gaining that banished effect. So this just card works in tandem with a lot of your cards. Granted, it's only for the 1 turn that you're getting that attack boost, but this card is already sitting at a nice 3,000 attack, so you're not really super worried about, you know, having things get over your opponents. A lot of cards really can't get over that 3,000 unless it's, you know, aided by a field card or an equip card. And obviously with the equip cards and stuff that we have in this deck, you could obviously put it onto this card to kind of just boost it up a little bit and be able to do what you need to do and win the duel. Up next, we have Shiranui Sun Saga. This is a level 10 zombie synchro monster sitting at 3,500. Same summoning requirements as all the other Shiranui cards. If this card is special summoned, you can return any number of your zombie synchro monsters that are banished or in your graveyard to the extra deck. Then you can destroy cards your opponent controls equal to the number of cards returned. If a zombie monster you control would be destroyed by battle or card effect, you can banish 1 Shiranui monster from your graveyard. Instead, you can only special summon this card once per turn. Best card to probably have in this deck by far. Not really one of the easiest ones to get out, but if you can, then great. But definitely a good card to have, being able to, you know, get rid of monsters on your opponent's side of the field based on the number of synchro monsters that you have. So this is definitely a late game card, not an early game card. But it's great to have and running in this deck, and it definitely, you know, with that 3,500, not a lot of things are going to get over that. And plus with it being a level 10, obviously if you have anything that has, you know, cards that work with level 10 monsters, this is great to have. And finally, the last card of this deck, Shiranui Skill Saga Supremacy, the only link card of this archetype. This card is a requires +2 zombie monsters. Synchro monsters you control cannot be destroyed by fire. Synchro monsters you control cannot be destroyed by card effects. Fire monsters you control cannot be destroyed by battle. During your opponent's turn, quick effect, you can target one of your banished zombie synchro monsters, special summon it to your zone this card points to. You can only use this effect of Shiranui Skill Saga Supremacy once per turn. Now, what is great about this card is the effects of it protecting your monsters. All synchro monsters you control cannot be destroyed by card effects. That's great. All fire type monsters you control cannot be destroyed by battle. That's even greater, because that it protects both your synchros and your main deck monsters right off the bat right there. And then on top of that, during your opponent's turn, by being able to target one of your zombie synchro monsters, you can special summon it to the zone that this card points to. So if you have nothing that's below it in terms of the extra monster zone, boom, being able to summon out another synchro monster. It's great to have in this deck. Highly recommend running it. You can probably run more of lower link monsters to be able to get it out. There really isn't a lot. I'm pretty sure Avenged Dread Savior is a level 2 link, so you can kind of use that in tandem with this card, but obviously I'm not running that, especially because that's also an ultra rare card, and that goes for the Vandred archetype, which really doesn't work over well with this. Being able to get more zombie monsters in this deck is a little bit hard, but I feel like with the cards that we have here, it kind of works really well. And I really love this deck. This deck works so well in terms of what it can do, and I thoroughly enjoy it. But what do you guys think? Let me know down in the comments below. if you run this deck, what you would prefer to see. But let's keep it to more of a friendly discussion. Let's not bash. We're trying to move away from that cancel culture that the Yu-Gi-Oh community is known for. We're trying to be more respectful to each other and just being able to help each other out. But like I said, this is what I run based on what I play, and I enjoy it. And like I said, let me know what you think in the comments below, and if you want to discuss more, please consider joining my Discord. I love being able to chat and talk with you guys. And as always, this video is brought to you by Ahoy Print. Ahoy Print is the printing company that I work with, and they make awesome pieces of material. They make stickers, they make posters, they have bundles, and if you use code Krimson at checkout, you get 10% off your order. But anyway, my guys, I hope you have a fantastic day. I will see you all later. Have a wonderful day, and as always, good gaming. God bless, go beyond, and keep on keeping on.